They think I don't remember. They are wrong. My name is Lorraine Caldwell. I am 79 years old. And on the night my family forgot my birthday, I already knew exactly what they were planning to do to my house. I had known for 14 months, long before the forgetting got bad, long before I started calling my own granddaughter by my daughter-in-law's name, long before I got lost driving 2 blocks to the post office and a neighbor had to bring me home like a lost dog. 14 months before any of that, I sat down alone in a lawyer's office on Asylum Avenue, and I made sure that when they came for what was mine, they would find nothing left to take. This is the story of the year I quietly outthought my own son. Welcome to Grandma Never Forgets, where the woman everyone stopped listening to turns out to have been listening the whole time. My birthday falls in October. I turned 79 on a Saturday, and I baked my own cake that morning, same as I have for 60 years. Vanilla, buttercream roses. The recipe in my head because I have made it so many times. My hands know it better than my mind does these days. I set the table for 8. The good plates, cloth napkins, dried hydrangeas from the bushes along my front walk, the ones I planted the year my son was born. Nobody came. My son Gregory and his wife Diane were in Aspen, skiing. My grandson Aaron sent a text at 4:15. Happy B-Day, Gran. Skiing is amazing. Gregory didn't text at all. Diane posted a photograph of herself in ski goggles to her church group with one word underneath it: blessed. I sat at my own table in my own kitchen in front of a cake with 9 candles because 79 of them seemed like too much fire for one old woman to manage alone. And I waited. Nobody came, except her. My granddaughter Nora drove 3 hours from Hartford, still in her work shoes, with a bouquet from a gas station on the seat beside her. She found me at the table with the candles melted down into the frosting and the ice cream gone soft in its carton. I looked at her, and God help me, for one long, terrible second, I wasn't sure she was real. She cut me a slice. She sang to me. I asked her to start over halfway through because I'd lost the thread of the song, and she didn't laugh at me. She just started again from the top. I want you to hold on to that image, because everything that happens next only makes sense if you understand what that girl was to me, and what I had already decided to do about it, long before that lonely cake ever came out of the oven. I should tell you who we are, because families like mine don't look like the kind of family this happens to. We are Caldwells of Briarwood, Connecticut. Comfortable, respectable. My late husband and I bought this house in 1972 for $18,000. It's worth $680,000 now, though I have never once looked at it and seen a number. My son Gregory managed accounts at an insurance brokerage until he decided that playing golf 3 times a week counted as consulting. My daughter-in-law Diane sits on the library board and organizes the parish galas, and has a particular voice she uses for people she has decided not to take seriously. My grandson Aaron runs his own construction company, Aaron Caldwell Properties, and drives a German sedan I couldn't have afforded in any year of my working life. And then there is Nora, my granddaughter, a paralegal at a 4-person elder law office in Hartford, $47,000 a year, studying for the bar exam at night at her kitchen table, the way I used to study seed catalogues at mine. Diane calls her the paperwork one. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, I heard her say Nora was doing her little legal assistant thing, like selling friendship bracelets at a farmer's market. Nora never argued back. She just kept reading the fine print. On everything, including, eventually, on me. This house is where my son took his first steps on the linoleum. It's where I taught Nora to read a lease on the back porch when she was 19, my reading glasses on my nose and a red pen in my teeth. I co-signed her first apartment because her own parents wouldn't. That house was mine in every way that matters, and, as it turned out, in no way that my family thought counted anymore. I noticed the forgetting first with names, small slips, then appointments I'd written down and still missed. Then, one August afternoon, 14 months before that lonely birthday, I got in my car to drive to the post office 2 blocks from this house and ended up 2 towns away, in a parking lot I did not recognize, with no memory of how the last 20 minutes had gone. A neighbor found me and drove me home. I sat in my kitchen that night more frightened than I've ever been in my life. Not of dying, of disappearing while I was still alive to watch it happen. Of becoming a woman other people would decide things about, instead of a woman who decided things herself. I called my doctor. Dr. Mercer used a word I still remember clearly, even now. Early stage. She told me I likely had a year, maybe 2, before the window closed, before I would no longer be legally able to make binding decisions about my own life. I did not tell my son. I have thought about that decision every day since, and I would make it again every single time. I knew my son. I loved him with my whole chest, the way you love the first person you ever held in your arms. But I also knew, with the plain, unsentimental clarity that sometimes comes right alongside a diagnosis like mine, that Gregory would do whatever Diane told him to do, and that Diane would look at this house and see 680,000 reasons to solve her son's business troubles. So I called my late friend Dorothy's lawyer instead, a woman named Ruth Adler, elder law, an office above a print shop on Asylum Avenue. I put on my good slacks and my pearl earrings, and I drove myself to Hartford with a folder of my own, the deed, my tax records, my old will from 1998, and a legal pad of questions I had written out the night before in my best handwriting, because I wanted the record to show, whatever happened to me later, that on that day I still knew exactly what I was doing. My son will do whatever Diane tells him, I told Ruth, and Diane will sell this house the moment I can no longer stop her. I asked her to help me stop it before that day came. And then she asked me the question that decided everything. If your son can't be trusted to protect this house from his own wife, who can? I didn't hesitate as long as you might think. Only one name came to me, and it wasn't my son's, and it wasn't my grandson's. It was the granddaughter who read fine print for a living and had never once, in 32 years, looked at me like I was a problem to be managed. I chose Nora. Not because I loved her more than my own son, because I trusted her more, and because some kind of love, the kind that actually protects a person instead of just feeling nice, has to be built on trust, or it isn't worth very much at all. Here's what Ruth and I built, in language plain enough that I could still explain it to you now, on a day when plenty of other things have slipped away from me. I put the house into a trust, not mine anymore, not really, held in trust, with Nora named as the person who takes over managing it the moment I no longer can. I signed a power of attorney making her my agent for money and health decisions, a document built to survive exactly the kind of forgetting I was afraid of, not expire the moment I needed it most. And I asked Dr. Mercer to write down, in her own hand, on that exact day, that I understood everything I was signing and why. August 9th of last year, I signed every page myself. My hand was steady. I remember that morning better than I remember most mornings since. Ruth asked me if I wanted to tell my family. I told her no, not yet. I told her, when they come for the house, that's when Nora opens the folder. I wrote a note to put on top of it in my own handwriting, so that whatever else had left me by then, she would still hear my actual voice giving her permission to fight. I drove home that afternoon and I baked bread, because that is what I do with feelings too large to hold any other way, and I did not tell a single soul in my family what I had done. I let them go right on believing that the woman getting quietly foggier every month had nothing left to protect herself with. I have never enjoyed keeping a secret so much in my entire life. The forgetting did not wait politely for me to finish my affairs. Within a few months, I was calling Nora by Diane's name at dinner. I left the stove burning 3 separate times. Then I fell in September, hard enough to end up in the hospital overnight, confused according to the discharge papers Nora found later, and recommended for a neurological follow-up I never got the chance to attend on my own terms. That same week, I understand this now, though I didn't understand it then, moving through those days in a fog thick as October rain. My son sat by my hospital bed with a stack of papers and a pen, and he told me it was just something to help him manage my bills while I got my strength back. I don't remember signing it. I remember a pen being pressed into my hand. I remember someone's fingers guiding mine along a line. I do not remember reading a single word. They will tell you, and perhaps they even believe it themselves, that I understood. I did not. My own signature from that week looks like a stranger traced it. Thin, broken, the loops collapsed. Nothing like the woman who had signed her name with such steady confidence 1 year earlier in Ruth Adler's office. A hand doesn't forget how to write. It only shakes like that when the mind behind it has already left the room. After that, things moved quickly, and I moved through most of it half underwater. I remember hearing doors on Tuesdays when the visiting nurse came, strangers' voices in my kitchen, footsteps upstairs where no one had walked in 20 years. I remember thinking, in whatever fragment of clear thought surfaced long enough to notice, someone is walking through my house like it already belongs to them. I found out later there was a lockbox clipped to my own gas meter, hidden behind my hydrangeas, the kind real estate agents use to let strangers in when the owner isn't home to answer the door. My own home, and I needed a stranger's key code to be let back into it. I want to tell you something about what dementia does to a person, because I don't think people understand it from the outside. It does not turn off a person's knowing. It only makes the knowing slippery, hard to hold on to, easy for other people to talk you out of 5 minutes after you felt it clearly. I knew something was wrong nearly the whole time. I simply could not always keep hold of the knowing long enough to do anything with it. That's exactly why, 14 months earlier, I had made sure the doing didn't depend on me holding on to anything at all. I think about the woman I was in that lawyer's office more often than I think about almost anyone else these days, including some of the people standing right in front of me. I miss her. She was frightened, and she acted anyway, which I have come to believe is the only kind of courage that actually counts. Courage that waits for the fear to pass isn't courage. It's just luck that arrived before the danger did. Mine didn't. I had to build the whole plan with the fear still sitting right there in the room with me, which brings us back to that lonely birthday cake and the granddaughter who found me at my own table, talking to candles that had already gone out. The next morning, while I dozed in my recliner, 2 people came to my door. I woke enough to hear voices, a woman's, calm and clipped, and then quiet. I learned afterward it was Ruth Adler herself and her colleague Nathan, delivering into my granddaughter's hands the folder I had sealed with my own wax and my own signature 14 months before, exactly the way I had asked them to, exactly when the time finally came. That evening I had one of my clear hours. They come less often now, but when they come in fully, like a light switched on in an empty room. Nora was sitting with me. I looked at her and I said, "They think I don't notice." I don't remember what I said after that, but I remember the feeling behind it perfectly. The way you remember the shape of a dream after the details are gone. I remember wanting her to know that some part of me had been standing guard the entire time, even while the rest of me wandered. A few nights later, in another clear hour, I took the crossword puzzle I still do every day, still in ink because pencils are for people who don't trust themselves, and I told her one more thing, the only instruction that mattered to me as much as the house itself. Don't let them take the table. That table came up from my mother's house in Bridgeport on the back of a pickup truck in 1974. Every scratch on it is a Thanksgiving I won. I have eaten more of my life at that table than in any other single place on this earth, and I was not going to let it go to strangers along with everything else. She promised me. The table stays. I was not in the room for most of what happened next. My memory does not always let me stand where I need to stand anymore. So I have had to receive most of this story the way you receive a gift from someone who loves you, after the fact, wrapped carefully, told to me more than once because I sometimes need to hear a thing twice before it settles. Nora told me my daughter-in-law's exact words on the phone, the night Nora called to ask about the lockbox on my gas meter. Diane told her the house could fund a proper care facility for me and help Aaron through a rough patch, and that it was the responsible thing. And then she said the sentence Nora has never once repeated to me without her voice changing. She won't remember the house by Christmas. I want you to sit with that for a moment, whoever you are watching this. Somebody decided my worth had an expiration date, and she said it out loud to the one person in this family who was never going to let that be true. Nora told me about my grandson Aaron standing in my kitchen with a can of sparkling water, explaining that his construction company owed $740,000 in 8 weeks, and that selling my house would fix everything for everyone. Everyone except me. She told me about my son. He came alone. In the old car nobody would notice, and he stood in this kitchen and said he remembered me singing here on Sunday mornings. Patsy Cline. while I did the dishes. He told Nora he didn't want any of this, and then his phone lit up with a message from his wife, and he left through the back door without saying goodbye to his own mother, sleeping 10 feet away. I've made my peace with my son in the only way that was left to me. I forgave him for being weak before Nora ever finished telling me the story. I've not yet found it in me to forgive myself for knowing, 14 months in advance, that he would be. Nora told me she found the papers they made me sign hidden with an unsigned sale agreement, my name written in below the signature line in someone else's careful pencil, like a rehearsal for a forgery. She told me a lawyer named Linda at the title company had noticed something wrong with the paperwork weeks before the closing date and quietly flagged the file. She told me an anonymous phone call had already been made to Protective Services 6 weeks before Nora ever picked up the phone herself. Somebody in my family or near it who never gave their name, but who couldn't stay silent either. I don't know who made that call. Some days I let myself hope it was my son, keeping one small promise to his own conscience, even while he couldn't keep the bigger one to his mother. I'll probably never know for certain. I've decided to believe the kinder version, because at 79 I've earned the right to choose which stories I keep. The closing was set for a Tuesday at a title office 3 blocks from the Green at 2 o'clock. I did not go. My good hours are unpredictable, and Nora and Ruth agreed I would be safer and steadier at home. So this part of the story, too, came to me afterward, told slowly at my own kitchen table by a granddaughter who wanted to make absolutely sure I heard every word of it. Nora sat down at that table with a lawyer beside her and a folder in front of her, the same folder I had sealed 14 months earlier. Across from her sat my son, my daughter-in-law, my grandson, a realtor and a stranger from the company that meant to buy my house for $50,000 less than it was worth. Ruth laid 3 papers on the table, one at a time. The recorded deed showing my house had belonged to the trust for over a year. The power of attorney showing Nora had been my agent since before any of this began. And Dr. Mercer's letter, proving that on the day I signed those papers, I understood every single word of them, followed by a second letter, written only days before the closing, confirming that by now I no longer could. The title officer, a woman I have never met and will be grateful to for the rest of my life, read every page. Then she said 5 words that ended it before it could take one more thing from me. I cannot close this transaction. Nora told me my daughter-in-law cried, and that she wasn't sure whether the tears were real. She told me my grandson's hands went white around the arms of his chair when he understood what an 8-week deadline with no house to sell was going to mean for him. She told me my son didn't say a word the entire time, just stared at my signature on a piece of paper from a year I could still remember clearly, and did the arithmetic on exactly how far in advance his own mother had stopped trusting him to protect her. And she told me what Diane said to her on the way out the door. You'll regret this. When Aaron loses everything, when your father has nowhere to turn, you'll remember you did this. Nora picked up my folder, put it back in her bag, and told my daughter-in-law the only sentence of hers I've asked her to repeat to me more times than any other part of this whole story. You don't get to decide what she's worth. I was asleep in my recliner when she came home, a crossword still folded in my lap. She knelt down beside me and took my hand, and something in my sleep must have known her, because I remember surfacing just long enough to ask the only question that mattered to me in that entire 9 days. "Did you keep the table?" She laughed. "A real one," she told me later. "The kind that surprises you on the way up." "I kept the table, Gran." "Good girl," I said. And then, apparently, I was asleep again within the minute. I don't remember saying it. I believe her that I did. Some sentences are true whether or not I get to keep the memory of speaking them. I want you to know how this ended, all the way to the end, because I have had enough of stories that stop right when the hard part starts. My grandson's balloon payment came due 8 weeks later, exactly on schedule, and there was no house behind him to make it disappear. His company filed for bankruptcy that winter. He sold the car. Last I heard, he was working for someone else now, for a third of what he used to make, and I find that I am not glad about it exactly. But I am not sorry either. Some lessons only get learned at full price. My daughter-in-law's world got smaller the way small towns make these things happen. Quietly, one committee and one dropped phone call at a time. She and my son moved to a condominium in West Hartford in the spring. I understand she does not sit on the library board anymore. My son wrote to me in March, 3 sentences, in his own hand, which was its own kind of apology, because he knows I still notice handwriting even on days I don't remember much else. I should have done more. I know that now. I'm sorry. I had Nora read it to me twice. I've decided to believe that he meant it. I've also decided that meaning it at this late hour changes what he owes me, but it does not erase what he already cost me. Both of those things are true, and I have found at 79 that most of the important truths in a life come in pairs like that. The court made it all formal that spring. The September paper they forced into my hand was thrown out for good, and Nora became my legal guardian and the permanent keeper of the trust I built to protect this house before I ever needed protecting. She gave up her bar exam that year. She moved into my guest room, the one with the crack in the ceiling she's been tracing since she was 6 years old, and she has made sure, every single day since, that I eat my dinner, take my pills, and sit on the porch in the afternoon light, where the hydrangeas still bloom the way they have since the year my son was born. It was not the life she planned for herself. She has told me, more than once, that it is the one she chooses anyway. I know what that choice costs her, even on the days I can't hold on to much else. I know she postponed a career she worked years for. I know some nights she sits on the porch after I've gone to sleep and cries where she thinks I can't hear her, because loving someone through this kind of forgetting is its own kind of grief, grieved over and over, a little more each week. I want it said plainly in my own voice, while I can still say it plainly. What she gave up was not owed to me. She gave it anyway. That is the whole difference between the family that left a cake to melt on my table and the granddaughter who has never once let me eat alone since. Last Tuesday, I baked a cake. Nothing special. Vanilla, buttercream. No reason at all, because I have decided that a woman does not need a reason to have cake on a Tuesday, only a granddaughter willing to sit down and eat it with her. She sat across from me at that same scratch table from Bridgeport, the one that survived 50 years of Thanksgivings and one attempted theft, and she took a bite, and she said, "This is your recipe, Gran. It's good." Don't change it, I told her. I don't remember most of what happened yesterday. Some days I don't remember what happened this morning. But I remember that table. I remember the prism still hanging in the window over my sink, throwing small rainbows across the floor, the way it has every sunny morning since before my son was born. I remember a folder sealed 14 months before anyone came looking for it, and a granddaughter who opened it at exactly the moment I needed her to. A person's worth does not expire when her memory does. And it turns out the quietest kind of love in a family, the kind that plans ahead in secret and waits and trusts and shows up with a lawyer instead of a shouting match, is sometimes the only love in the house that was ever going to be strong enough to keep it standing. That's my story. One empty birthday table, one sealed folder, and an old woman who remembered to protect what mattered before she forgot almost everything else. If this reminded you to check on the older folks in your life, really check on them. Not just call at Christmas, do it today. If it reminded you that being forgetful is not the same thing as being foolish, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. Drop a comment below and tell me the name of the person in your own family who has never once been given enough credit. I read everyone. Subscribe to Grandma Never Forgets, and I will see you in the next one.